I'm Jeanette Paradiso, and I'm here at the Addison Historical Museum. For those of you who may not know, the museum is located at 135 Army Trail Road in Addison. We are just south of the Village Hall on Lake Street, and we are open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. And in this A Bit of Addison History program, we have been focusing on the fond reflections of Addison's days gone by a gentleman named Clarence Fiene, who was a lifelong resident of Addison. So we'll be continuing with that story today. Whenever tornadoes were sighted, they usually touched down in open areas west of Mill Road. Now and then, some buildings were damaged by storms. Farmer Ryan had a beautiful flock of white leghorn chickens in his yard. A very strong whirlwind passed through the area and vacuumed up the entire flock of chickens. Not as much as a feather from the flock was ever again seen, and years later, another tornado touched down in an area immediately west of the old mill. It demolished a barn and left the farmhouse intact. A section and part of the barn roof was lying along Mill Road. Now we move to a different subject of the transients who used to pass through Addison. Throughout the summer months, Addison would have its share of transients passing through the town. They would pass a number of houses, and whenever they came alongside of Grandma Feene's home, they would turn in and ask for something to eat. Grandma Fiene, being a good-hearted soul, would oblige, and in addition to serving the meal, she would pack a sack lunch so that the guest would not lack sustenance while wandering in this world. Indeed, Grandma Fiene was held in high esteem by the Knights of the Road gentry, which is what he called, Mr. Fiene called these transients. One day, a woe-begone hiker stopped in by Reverend Fotenhauer's residence and demanded 25 cents. Now, Reverend Fotenhauer was the pastor of St. Paul Lutheran Church here in Addison. If 25 cents was not forthcoming immediately, the transient said that he would resort to something that he had not done for a long time and was reluctant to do now. The pastor was thoroughly intimidated by this threat, and he feared that the tramp would come back later and burn down his house. The pastor handed him the quarter and then asked him what he would have done had he not given it to him. The man replied, "I would have worked for it." Well, needless to say, Pastor Fotenhauer was irked by being imposed upon, because 25 cents was a sizable donation in those early days. Of the noteworthy transients who came to Addison was an elderly man who had a curious way of walking. He would take one step forward, then he would drag the other foot forward for the next step. When he was asked what was wrong with his foot, he would reply in German that he had a pain in the leg. Hereafter, the man was nicknamed Pain in the Leg. Everyone liked the old gent. He was a gentle soul who would harm no one. And when tramps reached Addison in the evening, they would be locked up in the town lockup, which was located behind the old Village Hall on Lake Street. Of course, they would not be locked up until they consumed a tasty supper. In the morning, they were fed a hearty breakfast and then sent on their way. Small wonder that people loved to be stranded in Addison. Well, back to the man who was nicknamed Pain in the Leg, there were a number of greenhouses on York Street in South Elmhurst, and when greenhouse workers came to work after a bitterly cold winter's night, they discovered what appeared to be a man sleeping in one of the aisles. The man was dead. It was old Pain in the Leg. He somehow found his way into the greenhouse to escape from the bitterly cold weather. Being elderly, he no longer could withstand the rigors of winter, and many of Addison's townfolk were saddened by reports of his passing. So that pretty much ends our segment on Clarence Feene's fond reflections of Addison's days gone by, and we will continue in our next segment.